Good evening. Welcome everybody to this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee on Thursday the 11th of September 2025. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor Elaine Stringfellow, and as Vice Chair I'll be chairing this evening's meeting in the absence of the Chair, Councillor Caleb Tomlinson, who sent his apologies tonight. Committee members and members of the public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. If you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of 4 minutes. You will be timed and I will confirm when the 4 minutes run out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. Please come forward to the microphone when I invite you to speak, which is just there. Voting will be undertaken by the electronic voting system. Presume it's working. The outcome of the vote will then be confirmed by our legal officer, Liz, once it's complete. I'll begin with some housekeeping. Please can you ensure that mobile phones are either switched off or turned on to silent mode. We're not anticipating a fire alarm drill tonight, but if the alarm does go off, you should leave via the fire exit in the wheel room, which is just behind there, and wait on a car park to the rear of the building. If I can now ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting to my left, and go around one by one.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Walsh. I'm the Legal Services Manager, Team Leader.
Ben Story, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Ange Turner, elected member for Penworth and Broadoak.
Chris Lomax, Wantley Dale East.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith. I represent New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Peter Molyneux representing Samlesbury and Walton Ward.
Good evening, Hayden Williams, Councillor for Leyland Central.
Good evening, I'm Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Pillinger representing Buckshot and Worden.
Good evening, Fiona Hope, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Elizabeth Thornby, Head of Planning and Enforcement.
Thank you, everybody. Ben, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Joe, we've got to. As you mentioned, the Chair, Councillor Tomlinson, has submitted apologies. We've also had apologies from Councillor Peter Gabbett this evening.
Thank you. And does anyone have any interests to declare tonight? No. Okay, on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 24th of July 2025. I have the minutes here in front of me. I've read them and approved them. Do we have a seconder, please? So that's Councillor Pillinger seconded that. So I'll just sign them. Oh, so we need to go, sorry. Can we go to a vote, please? Apologies. Councillor Molyneux, it's not worked, I don't think. Okay.
Those minutes have been approved by members.
Each. So what am I up to? Page. Okay. Lizzie, do we have any appeal decisions?
Not this month, Chair, no.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 6, which is Oak Dean, Preston New Road, Mellowbrook. and Fiona will present this item for us. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. Right, thank you. This application relates to a residential property named Oakdean on Preston New Road in Mellowbrook, which is an area designated under Local Plan Policy G1 as Green Belt. Typically, when considering any planning application in the Green Belt, substantial weight is given to any harm to the Green Belt, including harm to its openness, with inappropriate development considered harmful to the Green Belt. However, there are exceptions to this rule, with the relevant one in this case being for the replacement of a building, provided the new building is in the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. This proposal is for a self-build, 3-bedroomed extended dormer bungalow to replace the original dwelling, which was demolished in April this year prior to this application. The proposal also includes an outbuilding, works to improve the existing access and other associated works. Okay, thank you. The site plan shows the position of the house and the outbuilding in a similar location as the original dwelling and double garage, with the driveway access from Preston New Road being centralised and set further back to assist in safe access and egress from the property. At the front there would be a low stone wall with soft landscaping behind. Adequate visibility space had been demonstrated and there would be parking and turning space for more than 3 vehicles. And then just to the right of the slide, the zoomed in site plan demonstrates compliance with the 45-degree rule. Now, this is usually more relevant to proposed extensions in semi-detached or terrace properties to assess impact to loss of natural light and risk of overshadowing to a neighbouring property. But nevertheless, the new dwelling would not be in breach of this rule at the front or of the rear, which is deemed acceptable. So here are some elevation drawings of the original dwelling prior to demolition and the proposed dwelling underneath. The roof ridge is no higher than the existing maximum roof ridge height of 6.7 metres as per the original, with the addition of dormers to the front and sides. The replacement dwelling will be longer at ground floor than the original dwelling by 3.25 metres and 1 metre wider. There will be no upper floor windows to the sides, with windows to the front, roof lights and a balcony with obscure glazing to the rear serving the master bedroom. The replacement dwelling will be set back 58 metres from Preston New Road, and this street scene image compares the original to the proposed dwelling and helps to demonstrate the relationship with the neighbouring properties. The separation distance to Kitemore will be the same as the existing at approximately 5 metres, with the gap to Homestead reducing by 1 metre, leaving a separation gap of approximately 4 metres. There are no residential properties to the front or the rear. The NPPF and the Local Plan Policy G1 explain that replacement building would not be inappropriate development if the same use and not materially larger, but does not state what materially larger would be. The Rural SPD, which offers some guidance, which is one of our documents, says up to 30% not being materially larger, with anything above this requiring special justification. The proposed dwelling will be approximately 52% larger than the original dwelling. Planning permission was granted in 2023 for the original dwelling to be significantly extended. The overlay floor plan that you can see at the top there shows the original dwelling's footprint shaded in grey. The red line shows the footprint of what could have been under the 2023 planning permission, and the thick black line is the proposed replacement dwelling being considered today. The overlay elevations show the proposed dwelling underneath, with the pink line showing the outline of the previously approved dwelling. Compared to what could have been built under the previous plan permission, the new dwelling will be slightly lower, the ground floor reduced in length at the rear, but be 1 metre wider. The 2023 planning permission, the large plot size for this residential curtilage, and no significant impact to neighbours compared to the original dwelling are accepted as special justification for the proposed dwelling at 52% larger. The proposed outbuilding, which forms part of the application as well, will be built in a similar location to the previous double garage and would only be 0.7 metres higher than what could be built as permitted development. It would be used for recreational purposes in incidental use to the dwelling and matches what was previously approved under the last application. So the site is a long-standing residential curtilage with limited ecology value, and there are no tree preservation orders or other ecological restrictions in place. GMEU Ecology have reviewed the application and the submitted tree report and had no objection, but recommended preliminary roost assessment, which has been carried out and identifies no concerns. And it just shows you there's going to be some new native planting at the front of hedges and trees. The existing side boundary hedges at the front will be retained. You can see some pleach trees along the side boundaries to the rear, and there's a little photograph of what the pleach tree might look like once they're mature and in place. So this is considered as adequate mitigation with anything that's lost on site. So this is some photographs of the original dwelling and garage before demolition, which was an extended bungalow with 2 ensuite bedrooms in the roof space, both with direct access to the rear balcony that had clear glazing at the time. And that just shows you where it was positioned in the plot before demolition and the relationship to the neighbouring dwellings of Homestead and Kitemore on each side. And then this is just some photos of the site post-demolition. So along the top, you can see there's a photo to the front where the current access is. So they're just moving that to the central area and widening the driveway. So it's not just, one car in and out at a time. The current site, you can see standing from the front looking up to the rear on the other side. So there's a large rear garden there that you can see. There's a footprint of what would be the outbuilding, because that had begun under the previous planning permission but has stopped until the application is considered tonight. So that's just to show you what it's like now. The proposed site is within the green belt, but would be an exception to an appropriate development. It is policy compliant with no statutory objections. There have been 3 neighbouring representations received in objection, as outlined in the report at section 7, and the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions as detailed at the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. That was very thorough. We'll now move on to any representations. We have 2 registered speakers, Darren and Caroline Marshall. If you can come up to the desk, and did you want to both speak together? You'll have 4 minutes each, or you can have 8 minutes in total and share it between you, whichever you prefer. Okay, if you press the red button when you're ready to speak, and just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Caroline Marshall. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Myself and my husband live next door to Oakdean at Homestead, as Fiona's shown on the planning documents. Firstly, I'd like to draw your attention to 10.1.6 on Mrs Hope's report, which references the Chartered Surveyor report regarding the structural viability of the original building of Oakdean, which the report says was part demolished. Full and actual assurance can be provided to committee by ourselves that evidence is that this report is factually inaccurate. It's misleading and therefore we believe has no credibility in this formal assessment. Evidence, as I've said, can be provided that the building, Oakdean, was actually demolished the day before the reported inspection from the surveyor, and therefore I believe means that this report is invalid in this committee. Our experiences since the site work began, including the unauthorised erection of hoardings on the roadside, have resulted in unnecessary, undue and extreme personal stress to us and our family. This cannot be underestimated and is wholly attributable to the total disregard of all planning law and processes. It is with this in mind that this work and the adopted principle by the applicant are on an easier to ask for forgiveness than seek permission basis, in my view. This approach prioritises decisive action, especially when delays or objections are likely. This is not thought by ourselves to be a justification, though, for reckless and harmful actions resulting in negative consequences to neighbours and their properties. I would implore committee members to bear this in mind when hearing objections this evening. The suggested removal of some trees under section 10.5.3 is objected, as these trees have grown fully within existing extensive hedgerows across the boundary at the front. Full removal would result in significant gaps in the hedgerow, which provides housing and protection for our local wildlife. Removal of these trees is wholly unnecessary to the driveway alterations, in our opinion. Therefore, I would ask you to support this objection. However, in an attempt to be reasonable with our neighbours, we would propose a compromise, recognising the tree report as well, and would suggest a reduction in height of these trees to the level of the current hedgerow rather than full removal. Due to our anxieties and experience of this forgiveness rather than permission approach, we remain very concerned of the potential unauthorised building creep with the new build, including the outbuilding. We feel it necessary to seek formal assurance from the Council that all necessary building inspections will occur to ensure all building work and site management is delivered in line with the outlined proposed conditions in Mrs Hope's report and planning permission this evening. So to conclude, conditions are requested to the front garden trees and assurance on monitoring of building work. I'd like to add finally that we'd like to collectively offer our sincere thanks to Mrs Hope for her balanced and proportionate approach to this very, very challenging and very distressing situation. We believe she's delivered this with great sensitivity, for which we are grateful. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to voice our concerns. It goes without saying that I wholly agree with everything my wife has said previously. I would like to add to her statement as follows. I would draw your attention to 10.1.4, which confirms the house will be 52% larger. As I have said in my original comments submitted in writing before the latest application, going as big as possible appears to have been the applicant's plan all along. To demolish a perfectly good house without authority on some pretext or other that there has been several, including the stated presence of asbestos, appears to have been a way to exceed previously agreed volumes even further. The planning officer herself has acknowledged the demolition was unauthorised. I could go into great detail regarding the impact of the applicant's contractor's actions on the immediate neighbours and utility companies and the disruption faced at the time and still to be faced in demolishing the house, but I'm aware that this is not a matter for planning committee. I would like to put our concerns forward in relation to 10.3.4. We strongly feel the continued presence in these plans of a balcony at the rear of the property, even with the side screening, has a significant negative impact on our privacy. The demolished property had a balcony where the neighbours sat and looked directly into a large part of our garden with an unimpeded view of a patio area used for family gatherings in the summer months and a play area used year-round by our granddaughter. The planning report presented states that the proposed new outbuilding will provide some screening of part of the garden. However, it is too far away from the proposed dwelling and not high enough to form any such screen. So this is not the case, and I would challenge this view. Our garden should be a private amenity, and I would respectfully ask that the committee consider how they would feel being observed from above while relaxing in a private area. As the report states, the plots benefit from a large rear garden, so I fail to see why it is necessary for the applicant to have a balcony with many alternative ground level spaces to sit and enjoy the outdoor space. I would respectfully challenge the planning statement, which basically says we should find somewhere else to sit if we don't want to be overlooked. I note the plans with the suggested 1.7 metre obscured glass sides. However, the issue will always remain that anyone who stands or sits and looks forward from the front of a balcony will see straight into our garden. If this balcony must be included, then I would like to see 1.7 metre obscured glazing, wrapping around said balcony. I would also request conditions attached as to usage strictly for the owners only. I've also suggested to the planning officer at a recent meeting further planting of mature bleach trees along the existing fence line up to the proposed new outbuilding, and if these trees reach their full potential, this may limit the overlooking. I can see on the latest plan that this suggestion has been incorporated, and I welcome that. In conclusion, while we accept that some of the issues raised in our response to the application cannot be addressed through the planning process, as your neighbour's guide leaflet states, I believe it is important that your decision-making process should consider how the lack of adherence to planning law has resulted in a total mistrust of the applicant and their agents. As a result of this, we remain extremely anxious about what effect a proposal of this size will have on our property. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Timed that very well. Very good. Thank you. Yes, thank you. The ward councillor who actually called this in, Councillor Glebe, isn't present, so she isn't here to speak. And now we have the applicant who would like to say a brief word. That's fast. Press the red button.
I'm a bit nervous. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Fazana Patel and I am the applicant. I find myself in a distressing and difficult position. I have managed the many challenges that come with a project of this scale, and despite those efforts, this is where the matters stand today. I will now hand over to my architect, Gabriel, and to Mark Butler, a professional acquaintance who has kindly agreed to support me this evening. They will provide the detailed planning points you require. Thank you for giving me the opportunity for my case to be heard.
Thank you. Thank you. Have we got Gabriel now? Good evening. You have 4 minutes from when you press your button. Okay.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Gabriel and I was the original agent and designer for the first application, which went through without any issues. I later stepped away from the project after the first planning approval. However, I was asked to return when questions began to arise, as I know the history of the site. From the outset, over 90% of the building was always intended for demolition. I can only apologize for the way the previous contractor managed the site, but my client has since appointed a new, more experienced contractor. As soon as the issues came to light, I advised to take immediate steps to submit a new retrospective planning application in line with the enforcement email so that the council has full oversight and the project is dealt with transparency. Should approval be granted, they are fully prepared to proceed responsibly with all the correct safeguards in place. Contact with the Health and Safety Executive has also already been made, and they have confirmed that they have no further comments. I will now be looking to quickly address the concerns raised and reasons why we are here tonight. Firstly, biodiversity net gain. Our revised landscaping proposal now introduces a significant number of trees across the site, helping to strengthen the bionet gain, especially at the front of the site. To add to that, any removed trees are replaced by 2 new trees, and any gaps within the hedges course will be filled in by the applicant with native species to ensure privacy is maintained. Secondly, inappropriate development. I recognise the importance of greenbelt controls. Therefore, as echoed by the case officer and local planning policy, the current design before you tonight is essentially almost identical in footprint and design to the previous approval, including the balcony. It wouldn't have been approved 2 years ago if this was inappropriate. Looking at the street scene, the house sits comfortably alongside its neighbours and is in fact smaller than nearby properties. Therefore, it is not inappropriate. Lastly, all other objections have been proactively addressed with the case officer following her meeting with the neighbours, as seen in the delegated report. Furthermore, although councillors are not obliged to meet with both parties, they are expected to remain impartial and give their consideration to all sides. Yet my client's 2 emails to the councillors has been unanswered since July. In closing, I truly believe this scheme will deliver a high-quality, well-designed home that respects its greenbelt settings. I hope that the members and chair of this planning committee can clearly see that the application stands on its own merits, as echoed by the case officer, enhancing the site and causes no additional harm to the greenbelt and neighbours. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And now, can I ask Mark to come forward, please? Hello, you have 4 minutes.
Chair, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Mark Butler and I live locally in South Ribble. I'm here as a professional acquaintance of Fazana. In terms of timeline and context, in November 2023, the original application was approved, which is similar to the current proposal. On the 4th of April 2025, site preparation and internal strip out began, with over 90% of the original structure already planned for demolition. Foundations for the approved extension were laid. On the 6th of May, the Enforcement Officer, Mark Bray, contacted the applicant and asked for a retrospective submission, which was then duly provided. Design and Greenbelt. What is before you now is consistent with the previously approved scale and design. There is only a minor difference in footprint, with no greater effect on openness and no added harm to the green belt. This is a mixed streetscape, with neighbouring properties varying in size and style, several larger with outbuildings, and this proposal sits well within that context. Balcony and privacy safeguards. The previous dwelling had already had a rear balcony and was approved again in 2023. This proposal is the same size, but now includes a higher 1.7 metre obscure privacy screen, together with fences and pleach trees, giving neighbours better privacy, no increase in harm, and stronger protection than ever before. Trees, biodiversity and safety. Fazana has undertaken ecological and arboricultural surveys and is committed to enhancing biodiversity and sustainability. All existing hedges will be retained, with additional native planting and multiple new trees introduced to both the frontage and rear gardens. Only the diseased or unstable trees identified in the surveys will be removed, and these will be replaced responsibly to minimise risks, ensuring safety while maintaining both privacy and site security. Highways and drainage. The current driveway is so narrow that vehicles must reverse directly onto the main road, which poses a risk for both drivers and pedestrians. The proposed scheme allows for on-site turning, enabling vehicles to exit forwards, a clear improvement in highway safety. In addition, drainage will be improved as part of the works, with drainage and topographical surveys already undertaken to ensure surface water is properly managed. Utilities and infrastructure. The utility network here dates back to the 1920s, and this project will improve both this property and neighbouring homes. Finally, personal circumstances. This is not just a planning application. It is about family, care and compassion. Fazana currently lives in a townhouse with no downstairs facilities, no garden and nowhere suitable for her elderly mother. This build would provide a safe, accessible, multi-generation forever family home where she can care for her mother with dignity and comfort. She has already faced financial and emotional strain from delays and objections. What she seeks now is simply the chance to move forward to complete her forever home for her family. She also tried to contact her ward councillor, Councillor Gleaves, who called in this application today. She has copies of emails showing she contacted her twice, on the 18th of July and again on the 9th of August of this year, but sadly received no acknowledgement or response. As a ward resident, she feels disheartened by this and wishes to express her gratitude for being heard here today by you people, despite these changes. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, the proposal is modest and policy compliant. It protects the green belt. It retains the previously approved balcony, but now with a higher 1.7 metre privacy screen, fences and bleached trees, giving neighbours better privacy, no increase in harm and stronger protection than before. It enhances biodiversity and sustainability. It improves highway safety. It upgrades outdated infrastructure. And most importantly, provides a much needed multi-generation forever family home. And for all these reasons, committee members, I respectfully ask you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now bring this application into committee. Would anybody like to speak on this? Oh, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious about the demolition. So is it right that demolition took place without planning permission? And do we know the reason why? Thank you.
Can you answer that, Fiona?
Yes, Chair. There was, with the previous planning permission, a significant amount of the original dwelling would have been demolished. I mean, the last historical photo I can find of the original bungalow was the 1940s. So I think when they started works, there has been structural issues identified. There is some disagreement over the date of the demolition. I can only go off what the Chartered Surveyor's report said. But when it was demolished, they didn't submit, they meant to submit, if you want to demolish a home, you either do it as part of the application prior to demolition, so to demolish and then build a replacement dwelling, which would have been absolutely fine, there would have been no issues with that, or you submit what we call a notification to see if prior approval would have been required. That gives us a chance to see if it was a listed building and a conservation area, if there was anything particular about that property, would utilities be managed properly and things like that. That wasn't done. They should also have contacted building control for a notice with regards to demolition, and they would have checked the health and safety and everything with regards to that. So enforcement did attend the site after the demolition, which had already occurred. So the prior notification process is no longer open to us. So the resolution to that planning breach is in effect submit an application for a replacement dwelling, which is where we're at now. But like I said, if they had submitted an application to demolish and replace, we would have, still gone ahead with that. Building control, the actual unlawful demolition is in their hands completely. And it's up to them whether they prosecute with regards to demolition. That's not in the remit of planning at this stage. We've resolved the breach of planning with this application, and they would consult with legal, whether it's worth in the public interest, have any issues that were raised with utilities and gas and water now being sorted, which they had. And I spoke to building control earlier today to confirm that they decided it was not worthy of prosecution at this stage. And, that's why we're out here tonight to consider the replacement dwelling with no further action.
Thank you, Fiona. That explained everything. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a rather sad situation to be in, really. This demolition took place without any knowledge of the residents. I believe there was obviously gas pipes, electric connections and other things. And I think I'm right in saying they had a power cut due to bashing into pipes. It's either gas or electric or something of that, which is absolutely scandalous as far as not letting the residents know. There could have been an explosion. It could have been a major event there, and I'm not really happy about that. This just seems to be a lack of communication between, the residents there and obviously the applicant who's putting this in this evening. And it's a sad thing that I think a lot of these things could have been sorted if they'd been able to speak to one another, but that doesn't seem to have happened. And I just think it's a shame that people didn't get their heads together and talk to one another. But I appreciate that's not always easy to do. But in this case, I think it would have proven a lot easier and a lot better. Maybe it wouldn't have been called in if that was the case, but it has, and we're here with it this evening. I'm not particularly happy about certain things that have gone on. It's, as I say, when you've got someone who's deciding to demolish a site without getting sufficient acceptance, that's not right. And it's almost like they can do that, and where's the repercussions? There doesn't seem to be any repercussions for people who make those decisions, and I think there should be. And if there's not, maybe that's something that we'll consider for the future. But unfortunately, I think the way this has worked out, things that are being asked, there's one or two things that the residents asked about trees that I suggest might be something that we could do as far as the overhang at the back, as far as overlooking. It would appear when I've gone through that report that all that sort of side of it has been looked into, various angles have shown, and this, that, and the other. It's quite technical how they're doing it. But I just think sometimes it's a pity that we can't do that. But I think most things have been put into place. I'm not too happy about this 50-odd%. We were talking of the 50, being actually bigger, 58% larger, which would have been 68% larger if we'd have included the outbuildings. But I think I'm right in saying because the application was passed before the previous application, and it was a similar bill, we're not, it's almost like we can't really do much about that. But from my point of view, I'm not particularly happy about how this has been done. I think it's a lesson, certainly for the applicant and for the residents, to see that, if we can get together at times, and I hope that maybe on condition-wise, we can put some conditions in this evening that will benefit both parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to comment on there, Fiona?
This is an application for a replacement dwelling, and it's up to members to decide how they choose against that. What you can consider the previous permission, and yes, this replacement dwelling is almost identical to what it could have been. So they haven't come in with something significantly larger than what they could have built anyway. But this is a new application for a replacement dwelling, so you can consider that previous one with regards to the material larger thing. But that doesn't mean you have to make that decision. With regards to the trees and the landscaping and things like that, the tree report does say that any trees removed were low value, at risk. Some were recommended for removal. There is a boundary tree, one or two boundary trees with the neighbour that I know is currently under dispute with regards to the ownership of that tree and so on. And I've been assured that it won't be removed until they've established the ownership of the tree, because it does lie within existing hedgerow. But boundary issues, as you're aware, aren't a remit of planning either. And for someone to remove a tree on private land that's not protected wouldn't need planning permission anyway. So with regards to the trees, there's not much else I can add with that. You can see yourself the tree report and the landscaping scheme for mitigation for any lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. There's obviously some unfortunate history which is surrounding this application, which is unfortunate, but is not necessarily relevant in planning terms. I spent a long time reading this over the last few days. It's a difficult and
complex application in its own right. And for a single application, I don't think I've seen anything as difficult as this one. I probably spent about 5 hours reading this, which seems a bit silly because it's a single application. I've read every single report on the planning portal 3 times, so I've got a good understanding of it. As I say, the history is difficult, but I agree that it is a high quality, well designed home. It is, and for that reason, Chair, I will propose approval.
So Councillor Smith is proposing approval. Councillor Williams, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, how this has come about, as Councillor Smith has said, it is unfortunate, but we can only deal with the application that's put in front of us that goes forward, not necessarily the stuff that's happened in past. You know, obviously some contractors are better than others, and some contractors manage sites in better ways than others. You know, it looks like the applicant has been dealt the rough end of the stick with the contractors, and obviously they've changed it. The property itself is virtually the same size as was originally planned. A lot of the items at dispute, i.e. the balcony, was already there, and we've got the privacy glass. That's something that's in there that's sorted. That, you know, that issue's been negated. As Fiona said through the report, the biodiversity net gain didn't have to comply with it strictly if you didn't need it to, but that has been complied with, and I'm quite happy to second Councillor Smith's proposal that we approve this application.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Has anybody else any other proposals or anything they would like to comment? Councillor Green?
It's just really to reiterate what everybody else has said. I'm just disappointed because, as usual, we've got green belt policies, and for one reason or another, every application we seem to get, there's a type of, shall we say, change to that policy that enables the developments to go ahead. So the policy of Greenbelt that we've got, 90% of the time isn't being followed, and I'm very sad at that. Like it's been said, you're supposed to only allow, it used to be just on the footprint of the previous property, but then it's showing you're allowed up to 30% maximum. This is 52%, not counting the outbuilding, which would be 68. And I know on the diagrams it looks that it's not a lot larger. It's increased by that much, which is double in size to what it was before. And that's Greenbelt land. Have we got policies in the local plan to protect Greenbelt, or have we not? Because it seems every application we get counteracts that, and we lose the protection of that Greenbelt. I'm just sad about that. I don't think there's anything other way forward than to pass it, but I'm not really happy about it.
Thank you. Councillor Pillinger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the green belt, I think the question then would have been one to be brought up under the previous application. Once that application had been made and accepted, I find the idea of an alteration to a property that only leaves 10% of the original property there, but that's the previous application. As I look at what's planned, I do think we've got a good development on that site. I have walked down that road, not recently, but I have been down that road. I know what the houses look like. They're some way set back from the road along all of them, which gives a lot of privacy to people. But of course, they are fairly close together when you get to the actual house. I hope that we will give permission. We'll accept the recommendation, and I would have proposed or seconded it myself. I hope that there will be ways in which I was grateful to the objector, the next door neighbour, because I got a sense that they had felt that there has been some move towards mitigating their objections. And I hope that the neighbours will eventually be able to find ways to get along with one another after this. But I think we should approve this, because not approving it leaves us with a remaining empty building site. And I think that's intolerable.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this? In that case, then I shall move to the vote. So the officer recommendation is to approve with conditions. So can we vote on that, please?
So members have voted and they have voted in favour of officer recommendation, which is approval with conditions.
Thank you. If you've just come for that particular planning application, you are free to leave now if you would like to, but you don't have to. You can stay and enjoy the rest of it. Thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to item 7, which is plot 2, Avondale, Dob Lane, Walmer Bridge, and Elizabeth Thornber will present this for us.
Thank you, Chair. This one should be a little bit briefer than the previous. It is an application from a close family member of one of our planning officers, and that is why it's been brought to Planning Committee under the Constitution. So the application is for a non-material amendment to permission 072024 VAR for addition windows to side gables and 1 roof light to the front pitch and 2 roof lights to the rear pitch. This relates to plot 2 only. This is a red edge. You can see the site there off Dob Lane and the blue arrow pointing to the property. Property is under construction. As mentioned earlier, this is plot 2. So you can see there that they're up to the stage of sort of putting the roof on. Again, just another plan of where the plot is within the site. Existing elevations as approved, so you can see there's no roof lights or no side windows at the higher level on there, with the proposed just included within that roofscape. So the applicant is future proofing for whether they convert the loft in the future. At the moment there's no plans for that, but they do want to put those windows in while they do the works. Obviously that's much more economical. And that's the end of the brief presentation. So if there's any questions or...
Thank you, Lizzie. That was very quick.
Was very brief.
Councillor Pillinger, you'd like to...
I think in these circumstances, Madam Chair, I'd like to propose that we accept this.
Does anybody else like to speak or to...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to second it.
Thank you.
My first planning application I've ever seconded, ever. Thank you.
Thank you. So... anybody else like to speak on that, or should we move to the vote? I'll move to the vote then in that case. I thought I did. It's Chris.
Sorry. Members have voted in favour of officer recommendation that the application is approved.
So thank you for attending this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday the 9th of October 2025 and will be the first meeting of the committee in the new council chamber.
Whoopee, and thank you.